Welcome to the next in our series of online lectures for Western Civ 1. Today we are going to pick up where we left off and discuss how Christianity went from being just another mystery religion to becoming the dominant faith in the Roman Empire. As always, there are a number of key ideas and terms that you should pay attention to when watching this video, as well as some questions that you should be able to answer when the video is over. So let's get to it. Now, where did we leave things? Well, first of all, we were talking about religion and the Roman Empire. The traditional Roman religion was polytheistic. It was dependent upon ritual and sacrifice, and moreover, it was part of the Roman government. Rome's emperors considered worship of the Roman deities to be an act of loyalty to the state. At the same time, not participating in worship could be considered treasonous. We also know that the expansion of the Roman Empire brought dozens of so-called mystery religions into Rome. These faiths, such as the cult of Isis and Mithraism, featured secret teachings and initiation rituals. There were also secret benefits available only to believers. This included the promise of life after death, and obviously this made them popular among some groups. Something else we discussed is that a particularly volatile and violent part of the Roman Empire was Judea, the home of the Jewish people. The Jews resented Roman rule. Many, such as the Zealots and the Essenes, dreamed of driving the Romans from Judea and restoring Jewish independence. Now, Rome was consciously aware of this and kept troops in Jerusalem to try and keep order. Given this situation, it is no surprise that Christianity arose as a religion. What is a surprise is that it survived. After all, the cult of Isis and Mithraism both died out. Moreover, Jerusalem will be nearly burned to the ground, and tens of thousands, some even say 1 million, citizens died in 70 CE, when the Roman army will move in to crush a Jewish revolt. Yet somehow Christianity not only survived, it eventually came to dominate the Roman Empire. It will also transform Western civilization. But discussing Christianity can cause some problems. First of all, it's hard to separate history from faith. Yet in a history class, that is exactly what we have to do. So first, let's try and consider what historians believe to be true about Jesus. First of all, historians do believe that a man named Jesus did exist. He was a Jewish carpenter who lived in the city of Nazareth, and he was born sometime around 4 BCE. Now, Nazareth was a small town in Galilee, which was just north of Judea. Around the year 30 CE, historians believed that Jesus started a public ministry. In other words, he became a preacher. Now remember, this was not unusual at the time. Judea was full of people traveling the countryside, winning converts, and preaching that they had revelations from God. We've already discussed two of these groups, the Zealots and the Essenes. And like those groups, there was something about Jesus' message that seemed threatening to Roman authorities. Especially troubling was the claim made by Jesus' followers that their leader was the Messiah who would lead the Jews in the coming revolt against Rome. Some of these followers even insisted on referring to Jesus as the King of the Jews. With the cooperation of the upper Jewish authorities, who probably feared that Jesus was instigating a revolt that would destroy Judea, Jesus was arrested by Roman authorities and executed by crucifixion in the year 33 CE. Now, this is where historians and religious leaders part ways. Historians believe the story of Jesus will end with his death. However, Christians believe that Jesus in fact rose from the dead and continued his ministry. And this is where things start to get really interesting. First of all, we need to understand something about that early Christian church that started to form right after the death of Jesus. In Sunday school and in church, we are often led to believe that the Christian church simply sprang to life immediately after Jesus' resurrection. The truth is far more interesting. In fact, the early Christian church wasn't a church at all. Instead, early Christians, a tiny group of maybe a few dozen people living in Jerusalem, the capital of Judea, thought of themselves as Jews. Gatherings of Christians were very, very small and often took place in people's homes. Now, there were no church buildings and there were no priests. In fact, it was believed that such things were unnecessary. Jesus had said he was coming back soon. He would destroy the Romans and establish his kingdom on earth. Only when that didn't happen did Christians start to think, we need to figure out, who we are and what it is that we believe. Now, this is going to raise a number of questions. I have a number of these up on the screen. For example, how does Christianity survive the death of its leader, Jesus Christ? How does it separate itself ultimately from Judaism? Today, Christianity and Judaism are two separate religions. So how does that happen? How does Christianity survive the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 CE? And probably the most difficult question of all is, how does Christianity grow to dominate the Roman Empire and later Western civilization? Many of these questions will begin with Paul of Tarsus. Now, Tarsus was a city in the former Hellenistic kingdom of Pergamum. In other words, it's in modern-day Turkey. Thus, Paul would have been very familiar with many of the mystery religions floating around the Roman Empire at the time. Tarsus would have been a hotbed of Mithraism, for example. He would have been familiar with Zoroastrianism, possibly even the cult of Isis. Historians know that, like Jesus, Paul was a Jew. Now, initially, he persecuted Christians as those who he believed were distorting Jewish teaching. However, he was later converted to Christianity and became one of the most successful promoters of this new religion. So why is Paul so important? Paul's greatest contribution to Christianity will probably be to explain what it meant to be a Christian. He is very important in helping Christians to break away from Judaism and to establish Christianity as its own religion. Why? Well, because he helps to explain what it is Christians believe. So what does Paul say Christians believe? Well, first of all, he says that Jesus was the Messiah who had been prophesied in the Old Testament. Paul also says that Jesus was the Son of God. These two items are incredibly important because at this time there is no consensus on who Jesus was and what he came here to do. Not even Christians agree on who Jesus was. Some said Jesus was a prophet. Others said he was just a man who had gained God's favor. Others said he was God himself come down to earth in human form. Paul declared that Jesus was in fact the Messiah, prophesied in the Old Testament, and in fact that Jesus was the Son of God. Finally, one of Paul's most controversial claims is that Jesus had in fact died on the cross, and that 3 days later he rose from the dead. Paul argued that Christians needed to believe in Jesus' death and resurrection, because it was through this belief that Christians could win eternal life. Now, this is important because it makes Christianity one of the mystery religions that were so popular around the Roman Empire at this time. But Paul's contributions to Christianity go beyond mere doctrine. His concept of universalism is going to become critical to Christianity. Universalism is his response to the question of who could become a Christian. This is important because at this time many Christian leaders argued that before one could become Christian, one had first to become a Jew. This is tied to the notion that Jesus himself was a Jew, that all of Jesus' early followers were Jews. Therefore, it is argued by many that to become a Christian, you first must become a Jew. Paul argues that this is wrong, and in fact, Jesus' message was universal. It had been meant to be preached to all people, Jews and non-Jews alike. Therefore, anyone can become a Christian. All you have to do is accept that Jesus Christ died and was raised, and you're in. But universalism is also important because it sets Christianity apart from many of the other mystery religions that are out there. When Paul is asked who can become a Christian, he says anyone. Man, you can be men and women can become Christians. You don't have to be rich. Rich and poor can become Christians. Jews or non-Jews, also known as Gentiles, can become Christians. This sets Christianity apart from many of the other mystery religions, which really had an appeal only to certain groups. The cult of Isis, for example, was popular among women. Mithraism was a popular religion among men, and especially soldiers. Judaism even set itself apart by saying that to become a Jew, you had to be circumcised and you had to only eat certain foods. Christianity, or I should say Paul says to be a Christian, really, none of these things matter. All you need to do is accept that Jesus died, he was raised from the dead. That's all you need to do. But Paul is important for another reason. Paul is also important for the way he took to the road and spread the good news of Christianity throughout the entire Roman Empire. Now, Rome makes this possible. The particular structure of the Roman Empire makes Paul's attempts to spread the good news much easier. That's because Paul was able to use the roads and the harbors and the bridges that had been built by Roman empires to connect their empire together. Paul was able to use this not to increase trade around the empire, but he was going to use this to spread the good news, to travel about the empire and talk about Jesus and his teachings. So, in some respects, Rome is also going to act as an important player in the spread of Christianity. Only in an empire as connected as the Roman Empire could Paul have traveled as easily as he did. So, in conclusion, why did Christianity survive? First, there is Paul's teaching that through Jesus Christ, one can win eternal life. Simply by believing in Jesus Christ, his death and his resurrection, one could earn a place in the afterworld. Christianity also survives because of universalism. Paul argues that anyone can become a Christian, and this sets Christianity apart from many of the other mystery religions that are out there. And finally, the structure of the Roman Empire will make it possible for Paul to travel thousands of miles, spreading the good news and the gospel of Jesus Christ.